and your anger, your fear, and your hope. We're so grateful you're joining us. Now we have folks joining from all over the world. If you've been here before, you know how this goes. Please put your name, your pronouns, and where you're joining us from in the chat. We'd love to see you. We'd love to greet you. I'm going to take a moment to go over some housekeeping things, and then we have two amazing special guests joining us today. So the chat is very important to us on Power Half Hours. We know that. We're so grateful for everybody who uses it. We love connecting with you. It is a space where we are respectful and welcoming. We are respectful of new ideas, of questions, of people who are coming from all walks of life. We do not have space or time in the chat for any bigotry, any racism, misogyny, Islamophobia. It's not welcome, and it will be booted immediately. Today, the chat will run a little bit differently, so we'll keep it on in the very beginning for our normal check-ins and welcomes, but then we're going to turn it off so we can really focus on our special guests. And we'll turn it back on at the end so everyone gets a chance to say a little something before we end today. So today, we are going to be joined by our amazing executive director, Stefanie Fox, and also our very special guest, Ofer Cassif. We are so, so excited. This is going to be a space of great learning, which is why we're turning the chat off so that everyone will have the chance to focus. Before I hand it over to Stefanie, I just want to give everyone a second to do our check-in in the chat. So if you can take a moment and just take a deep breath and share with us what you're bringing to this space today. In one word or phrase, what are you bringing? How can we meet you here? Faith, energy, determination, heartbreak, rage, worried, motivation, tired, frustration, sadness. I'm really feeling so many of these. Scared, anti-colonial love, urgency, unmoored. Absolutely. Resourced after some rest, anger. Thank you so much to everyone for showing up in all of that complexity. This is a place where we're going to take all of those things and move them into action and learning. And eventually, hopefully not too far future, into a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire. All right, our techs are going to turn off the chats. They will still be providing links for any necessary information that you might need. But now I'm going to hand over the mic to Stefanie Fox. Thank you so much for being with us today, Stefanie.
Thank you, Bethany, and really great to see people's names and where you're at pouring into the chat. And I just feel really honored and eager to be here in this conversation with Dr. Ofer Cassif, who is a member of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. It is a rare and special occasion that at JVP we be having this kind of conversation with a sitting member of the Knesset, and Cassif is certainly an incredibly powerful and important leader on the ground. Ofer Cassif is a member of the Jewish-Palestinian socialist party Hadash. He is an anti-Zionist Marxist scholar and longtime advocate for Palestinian rights across all the territories under Israeli governance. And as a member of the Knesset, Cassif has advocated bravely for an end to Israel's military occupation and the military detention of Palestinian political prisoners. And most recently, following his criticism on October 18th of the Israeli government for carrying out pogroms and ethnic cleansing against Palestinians, he was suspended from the Knesset for 45 days. It is a huge honor to be here with you today, Dr. Cassif.
And to hear my honor.
Well, it is, to hear your take from the ground about this perilous and horrifying moment that we find ourselves in. We will have a full hour for this conversation. I expect we could go on for many more, quite honestly. But for this space, which is a place where we take action together each and every day, I expect this conversation will help to ground and inform us ongoingly going forward from here. And so I'm really, really grateful for your spending the time. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here and for all of your work.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think I'll just dive right in if that's okay. I've got some questions for you. I just like to take
Sure, of course. Just let me thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart to having me, and I'm very happy about it. I just came yesterday back to Israel after almost 2 months in exile, so to speak. So I'm dedicated my time for you, although I was after 24 hours flight, and so from South America. But anyway, that's important enough to sacrifice, as it were.
Well, thank you. Jet lagged and all. We really extra appreciate it. Yeah, and we know that the environment you're coming from in terms of the repression and the intensity you face for the brave stands you take are not to be taken lightly. So it means the world to us, but both what you're doing and that you do it with us in this way.
Absolutely, thank you.
And many of us have been in the movement for decades, and some of us even here on the call are brand new and are just getting involved. And so I think it will be wonderful to really start by zooming out and hearing from you and from where you sit, how you understand that we got here. Can you offer some context and framing for the Israeli state's role in creating the Gaza Strip to begin with and in supporting the creation and operation of Hamas? Would love to just hear your thoughts and big picture understanding.
Well, again, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much. I'm very happy to have this chance to talk to you. I wish we had done it much time before, and I will, of course, be glad to pursue with our new relations and to turn it, as it was famously said in Casablanca, into a great new friendship. So, and anyway, let's go back to the end of the 80s and the days of the first Intifada, in which, by the way, I'm happy or honored to say that I was the first imprisoned in military prison, because I was the first to refuse to serve in the occupied territories during the first Intifada. So that, reminds me almost in a nostalgic sense, some activities from then, 35 years ago. So anyway, when the Intifada began, the first uprising, a popular uprising of the Palestinian people against the ongoing occupation, so the PLO was the very clear, accepted universally or globally, internationally, by different states and institutions, including the United Nations, as the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, which, of course, Israel, the government of Israel, continuously declined and refused to recognize. Why do I mention that? First of all, it was a popular uprising that was not initiated by the PLO or anyone else. It was actually a real popular from the bottom, so to speak, that began. But the PLO, of course, began to divert or channel this uprising. And Hamas was in its very, very beginning. It was a relatively small, weak, politically speaking organization, which Israel decided very consciously to strengthen. Why? Because one should understand that all colonialist regimes in history, especially in modern history, always tried to find or to invent or to encourage leadership of the colonized that would cooperate or collaborate with the occupier. This is almost an iron, law of colonialism, or a rule of thumb, colonialism. So Israel is not different in that sense. It tried many times and times again, from the very beginning of the occupation in the late 60s, to initiate and to invent local leadership to be served as an alternative to the PLO. So Hamas, as I said, in 1987, 1988, was in its very beginning, and it was conceived by the government of Israel, which was a so-called unity government in which there was not only the fanatics of the Likud, but also Labour Party. And they conceived the Hamas as no more than a social religious movement that would or could have been served as an alternative to the PLO. And they decided to encourage and assist the Hamas to grow stronger and serve as an alternative to the PLO. By the way, it's very interesting that in the beginning of the 90s, Dan Kretzer was later ambassador of the United States to Egypt and thereafter to Israel. He already warned Rabin, who was the Minister of Defense. By then he was, I think, already the Prime Minister. I'm talking about 92, I think. But perhaps it was a bit before. He warned them and he said, you do not know what Hamas is. You think it's a social religious movement that wouldn't cause any harm and that you can use it as an alternative to the PLO. You have no idea about the history of the Islamic Brotherhood. You have no idea. He said so more than 30 years ago. Don't do that. You're going to regret. So he knew what the government of Israel was too bigot to recognize. They wanted anything that would serve them as colonialist power in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza Strip, and to reject and weaken the PLO. Now, this was actually how Hamas emerged and gained power. There is a very famous picture of leaders of Hamas, including Ahmed Yassin, sitting in the Kiryat, which is the headquarters of the Israeli army in Tel Aviv, with Rabin at his office in the late 80s or beginning of the 90s. So on the one hand, the writing was on the wall, unfortunately written in blood, not in ink. On the other hand, the government, the Israeli governments, now I begin to speak in plural, continuously preferred the Hamas over the PLO, because that way they believed they wouldn't be forced to recognize the legitimate aspirations and rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, independent state, etc., etc. So ever since then, given the support of Israel politically and financially, the Hamas grew stronger until he actually took control over the Gaza Strip. Of course, I'm jumping now many years ahead, and gradually on the West Bank as well, although there it doesn't control the West Bank because it cannot. But it is much more popular than the Palestinian Authority controlled by the PLO for very simple reason. The governments of Israel created that situation, especially under Netanyahu. With your permission, I will specify it in a second. But the Hamas is strong socially. For instance, the two most important universities in the West Bank, Palestinian universities, the West Bank, are controlled. The students' associations in those universities won the elections, democratic elections, as opposed to what's going on with the Palestinian Authority. At the university, there are democratic elections. The Hamas won both to the university, to the Students' Union Association, both in Al-Najah in Nablus and in Bir Zet in Ramallah. So, and by the way, we should bear in mind that doesn't necessarily prove that the ideology of Hamas took control. It says a lot about the reservation, to say the least, that people have towards the Palestinian Authority, and that there is no alternative, by the way, because Israel destroyed the alternative. So anyway, this is in a nutshell how the Hamas emerged, grew stronger, and took control over the Palestinian Authority one way or another. And of course, the coup that Hamas did in Gaza Strip, the deadly one, they killed people of the PLO, leftists, Democrats, etc. This is not a very, to say the least, a nice movement, to say the least. And it's before the massacre, before the crimes it committed against innocent Israelis, it also committed a lot of crimes toward the Palestinian people themselves. Either people of the left or the PLO, women, and others. This is a dictatorial regime in Gaza Strip. But nevertheless, Israel continuously supported it because Israel, the governments of Israel, especially of Netanyahu's, they don't care about the lives of Palestinians. Incidentally, they don't care about Israelis' lives as well either. So Netanyahu actually said very explicitly and clearly in a meeting of the Likud party in 2019 that if one refuses to accept a Palestinian state, if one rejects the idea of a Palestinian state, if one wants to prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state, one has to, and I quote word by word Netanyahu's, one has to weaken the Palestinian Authority and strengthen Hamas. Even Bezalel Smotrich, the infamous, both infamous actually, Bezalel Smotrich said in 2015, and I quote, the Palestinian Authority is a burden, Hamas is an asset. It's a quotation. Why did they say that? Because they don't want a Palestinian state and they don't want to negotiate with the Palestinian leadership. How do they do that? By classic colonialist divide and rule. If there is one authority in the West Bank and another in Gaza, you can say, and this is exactly what the government has been saying, those governments, all of them under Netanyahu, they've been saying, look, there's no one to talk to. Even if we speak to the Palestinian Authority, we don't have any guarantee that the Hamas in the Gaza Strip will actually accept anything we agree upon with the Palestinian Authority, so there's no need to speak. So they've been continuously manipulating the situation they themselves created. Now, it's not just a matter of words. Netanyahu, and it's not a secret, everybody knows that Netanyahu transferred a huge amount of money throughout the years. We're talking about more than $1 billion altogether. I think it was something like almost 400 or 4 million. I don't remember the name, but billions of dollars. I think it was $400,000 per year that Netanyahu actually transformed to Hamas directly from Qatar. It's not a secret. It's unclassified. Everybody knows about it. Why? Because he and his thugs up till now wanted this divide and rule, but they also wanted not to solve the situation and not, of course, to end the occupation, but to manage it. And they thought that's the way. So this is one part of how we got till here. Because, as Dan Kerzer said 30 years ago, throughout the years that the Israeli governments, especially of Netanyahu's, and most of the governments since the assassination of Rabin till now, were Netanyahu's governments. The vast majority continuously supported Hamas and did everything possible to weaken the Palestinian Authority. This is how we got here. And of course, add to that the crime of the siege. I mean, people in Gaza Strip have been living since the so-called disengagement in a huge prison, in a ghetto. And by the way, it's funny. Actually, it's not. I wish it was. It is ironic. Sorry. That now Netanyahu is a master of manipulation and fake and whatever. And he now tries to manipulate the public opinion by saying that this engagement is responsible for the status of Hamas and for what happened. First of all, it's a lie because I just sketched what actually led to this, and he is responsible. I mean, that's on top, of course, the fiasco of where moving the battalions from the frontier with Gaza to the West Bank. There are many other things, but this is the basis, because this is a continuous for years, for decades. It's not just a fiasco of one or two moves recently. It's much deeper than that and prolonged than that. But on top of that, what I wanted to say is that now Netanyahu says the disengagement plan was responsible, and he tries to put the blame on that. What is the irony? That Netanyahu voted for the disengagement plan 4 times, not once, not twice. All 4 votes on the disengagement plan, the Likud voted for it. Who brought it?
Break
Sharon
that down just a little more for folks who are newer to the issue of, could you break the disengagement down just a little bit more for folks who are newer to the issue and are hearing that and trying to understand what happened there?
Of course. When Ariel Sharon was the prime minister, we are talking now about 2003, 2004. So he came out with this plan, which is called the disengagement plan. This boils down to 2. One is that Israel, the government of Israel, is going to dismantle the military bases and all of them, and all settlements in the Gaza Strip, bring them back into the green line, that is, into the sovereign recognized state of Israel. By the way, destroy everything there, that nothing is going to get as is to the hands of the Palestinians, and move out. Now, this is one thing. The second thing is much more important. How Sharon explained as it were, the importance of this plan, as he saw it, of course, and his companions. He said very explicitly that the idea is not to begin a move towards a Palestinian state, but exactly the opposite, to prevent the establishment of Palestinian state. He actually believed that if Israel, as it were, because Israel didn't really leave Gaza Strip, I shall explain in a second, but formally, all the physical, sorry, just a few problems with my throat, so forgive me. Anyway, that they said what actually happened is that they physically left their presence in Gaza Strip, but it doesn't mean that Israel left Gaza, and I shall explain in a second. They didn't. But Sharon and his companions explained and believed that this move will prevent the establishment of a Palestinian state and will help Israel to take more control over the West Bank. Now, Israel, by the way, continued to rule Gaza in many respects. First, all supplies, as we see it now, gas, water, electricity, medicine, food, structural stuff, the territorial control over the sea by Gaza, the air, everything is controlled by Israel ever since the disengagement. In that sense, nothing changed. Now, when it came to vote in the Knesset, as I said, the Likud, which brought the disengagement plan, because Sharon was the prime minister of the Likud, they voted for it, including Netanyahu, including people like Tzachi Hanegbi or Israel Katz. I don't know how many of those names you know, but you don't lose anything if you don't. So don't worry. It's just better for your mental health, believe me, as an experience when I'm saying that. So anyway, so they voted for it. My companions, my comrades in Hadash didn't vote for it. They abstained because, for one hand, they didn't want to vote against an evacuation of settlements and military bases from occupied Palestine. On the other hand, why didn't they vote for? And I wrote an article, by the way, in 2004, in which I criticized my comrades at the Knesset then, because they didn't vote against. Why didn't they vote against? We are talking about 2004, 20 years ago, because we anticipated exactly what's going on now.
Right.
It's not a rightist perception or conception that collapsed. That proved itself. Exactly the opposite. It is the conception of the right wing that one can ignore the Palestinians and making above their heads some accords with Saudi Arabia or Bahrain that collapsed. That you can make a one-sided move without any dialogue and without any deliberation with the Palestinians that collapsed. We said in 2004, I'm talking about Hadash and mainly the members of the Knesset of Hadash who said that on the plenum at the Knesset. They said you are turning Gaza into a huge prison and ghetto. It will not deliver any solution. It will be exactly the opposite. And everything we foresaw then actually happened. So what really collapsed? Which conception? Now there are suddenly some people who consider themselves as leftists who said we were wrong. In what the heck you were wrong? The only thing that collapsed is exactly all conceptions of the right wing. The things we anticipated as the left just proved to be right.
Tragically right.
We said you cannot ignore the Palestinians. You cannot do any move which is one-sided without a deliberation and accept an agreement with the Palestinians. You cannot ignore the national legitimate aspirations of the Palestinian people to be liberated and establish their own independent state. You cannot make, as I just said, in conclusion, I repeat myself, you cannot make any agreements with the Arab states above the head of the Palestinians and ignoring them. You cannot manage the occupation and the so-called conflict. You either solve it or everybody pays the price. Unfortunately, the second happened. And exactly like we said.
It's really, it's also just sobering. We've obviously been here advocating all these years in the same, from our own location, but to hear from you, just also the fury at having been saying for years and years that the status quo is an incredibly violent system that must be uprooted, and to see it continue and worsen in all of these ways.
Absolutely.
Can you share a little bit more about the public opinion and atmosphere on the ground before and since October 7th? Just give us kind of a behind the scenes look that will help us understand what we understand is like overwhelming support in Israeli society for the continued genocidal campaign in Gaza.
Absolutely.
What's going on there?
How much time do I have, by the way? Because it's I may need few hours to.
That's a big question. Yeah, whatever slice of it you can offer us today.
So, okay, let me begin with something that I think that people must be aware of, and unfortunately, most of the people either are not aware of that, or some of them, of course, our political rivals don't want to be aware of that, of course. And this is the coup that the government tried to pursue under the sugar-coated term judicial reform. But I prefer to call it a coup, because it is. Why? Because they didn't try to reform the judicial system. They tried to eliminate the judicial system by totally destroying its independence. Now, without getting into too many details, because we don't have the time probably, but you all know, that since more or less the first day of this bloody government, which I refer to as, you probably know the term, the Churchillian term, and the wonderful band, Earth, Wind, not Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So I call this government Blood, Race, and Tears. and which is the entitlement that I think this government acquired very justly, as it were. So anyway, since this government of blood, race, and tears was formed, almost from the very first day, it decided to pursue with this coup and destroy the very few democratic ingredients that there are in the Israeli society and government and regime. Now, by the way, they wanted to do it not as an end in itself, but as a means to achieve or to realize another monstrous end, which is the subjugation plan of Bezalel Smotrich, which, if you want me, I can explain what it is. I don't know if you're aware of, or if I have the time to do it, so just tell me.
Maybe on one foot, just explaining the full
okay, so in 2017, Bezalel Smotrich, who who's not only a fascist, he really believes in racial Jewish supremacy. Literally, he actually believes in racial theory and in Jewish supremacy. He formulated and presented in 2017, he published it as an article in a rightist journal, the subjugation plan, which consists of three main elements. First, Israel must annex the all Palestinian occupied territories, primarily then the West Bank, without granting basic rights to the Palestinians. That is official apartheid regime, because practical apartheid regime already exists. This is to turn it actually into an official regime of apartheid. Secondly, those of Palestinians who are not ready to accept their destiny or their lot as slaves or subjects, not as citizens, are going to be expelled from their homeland. And third, those who are going to resist are going to be killed. This is in general the subjugation plan. This fascist government, and I have to say, this government is a full-fledged fascist government, full stop. No sugar-coated descriptions, no understatements, very frank, blunt, and clear and explicit description. A full-fledged fascist government, and allow me to say that I used to teach at the university a course on fascism. I know a bit what I'm talking about. It's not just a slogan. It is a characteristic, a clear characteristic of this government. Anyway, they wanted from day one to realize this plan of Smotrich. The end of the coup was that. The coup was a means. And of course, they want to turn Israel into a real fascist dictatorship, eliminating basic rights like the right to demonstrate, to associate, especially workers, to, of course, subvert the status of women, of the LGBT, etc. They failed. They failed mainly because of the protest. And once they had the chance, and I'm referring to the massacre Hamas committed, they've been using it as an excuse to achieve the very same end they failed in achieving by the coup. So one has to understand the policy that Israel is pursuing now, using the massacre, the terrible massacre, the diabolic one that Hamas did. They've been using it as an excuse not only to wage a genocidal assault on Gaza, and it is a genocidal assault. There are already almost 20,000 Palestinians who were killed, as far as I know. Perhaps the numbers are a bit different, but more or less 20. Today it was published also in the New York Times that the vast majority are children and women. So how can we call it if not a massacre or not a genocidal assault? I don't find any other appropriate term. Give me one and I use it.
No, there's no other language. Mm-mm.
And it's not only that. It's not only the worsening ethnic cleansing that Israel have been pursuing in the West Bank. I don't know if you follow that.
Yes, of course, yes. Well, say one word about it for folks who are newer. Yes.
So it's not only that, it's also what's going on within Israel. And here I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
The so-called, the very few, as I said before, and because there aren't too many, democratic rights that Israeli citizens have are under attack.
Yes.
By and under the smokescreen of the war, they are, and the government enjoys the support of the majority of the population, and the vast majority of the members of the Knesset, including those who call themselves opposition.
Right.
So if yesterday, metaphorically speaking, if yesterday the vast majority of Israelis in general, and of members of the Knesset in particular, opposed the coup, now they actually cooperate with that coup because it's under the smokescreen of the war. That's the situation.
Yes.
We are moving towards a fascist dictatorship. It's not, I don't want to sound over dramatic, but that's reality. I'll give a few examples perhaps you are aware of. It is totally forbidden to demonstrate against the war and for ceasefire or peace.
Like people can be shot in the street for trying to be in an intersection, right? Like
no, if we're talking about inside Israel, no one was shot for that. But first of all, the chief in staff of the police, the chief of the police said in the beginning, just day two of after the massacre of Hamas, he declared, I quote more or less what he said, it is totally forbidden to demonstrate again to have political demonstrations. You see, you can demonstrate, but not politically. If you find me something like that, I'll be very happy because I never heard about something which is a demonstration which is not political. But okay, I'm not from this chief of police. I have no expectations as far as intelligence is concerned as well, not just as far as morality or understanding of democracy are concerned. Anyway, so when people, Jews and Arabs together, try to demonstrate against the war, calling for ceasefire, etc., or just expressing empathy to the children of Gaza, not instead of the children of Israel, together.
Right.
The police brutally attacked them with batons, hit them, arrested them systematically. That's only the beginning of what happened. But when we, as Hadash, we try to demonstrate, to organize demonstrations against the war, calling for ceasefire, and I have to emphasize, there was no even a bit of sense of supporting or justifying or sympathizing Hamas. Nothing at all. We've been against Hamas and the massacre from day one and before. Anyway, when we asked, we have to ask, unfortunately, you need a license from the police to demonstrate. When we asked as Hadash to demonstrate in the two cities, Palestinian cities in Israel, Fachem and Sachin, they said, no, you have no license to demonstrate. We petitioned, we appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld the order of the police. The very same Supreme Court that 2 months ago we went out to demonstrate to save it and us from the government, from the coup, in its most liberal combination, voted in support and upheld the decision of the police. 2 weeks ago, as Hadash too, we asked to demonstrate in Tel Aviv against the war. Here it was okay because Jews are allowed to demonstrate. Arabs, not so much. And by the way, in the beginning, the police said, no, you can demonstrate, but only in a marginal place, up to one specific number. Here, the Supreme Court did say or rule that we are allowed to demonstrate, but again, it was not exactly where we wanted. There was a limitation of numbers. Nevertheless, we did demonstrate. I was in South America, unfortunately, so I couldn't, but we did demonstrate. By the way, a week before, a demonstration by the fanatic of the right, calling to eliminate Gaza, this demonstration was totally allowed by the police. There was no limitation, nothing. Just to tell you where we are. So we are, and by the way, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And hundreds of students are suspended from the universities, again, not because they expressed anything in favor of Hamas, let alone the crimes, but only because they empathize with the people of Gaza, the innocent civilians, or because they raise a voice against the war. So they were suspended by the university who turned. The universities turned into a policing institutions. You know it in the United States from the McCarthy years.
Right.
So people were fired from their jobs. Hundreds of people lost their jobs, or at least were suspended for the same thing. A good friend of mine, a teacher, a very acclaimed one, was first fired from the school because he posted the names and details of the victims in Gaza, nothing else. He was fired from his school. The Board of Education revoked his teaching license, so he cannot teach anywhere. He was arrested. A couple of weeks ago, the police wanted to charge him in treason. He was in prison.
The crime of acknowledging the humanity of Palestinians.
Exactly. So he was 4 days under arrest in not very nice conditions. I spoke to him afterwards. Of course, it doesn't resemble at all the conditions of Palestinians under arrest, but still. After 4 days, the judge said to the police, "What do you want? There's nothing here. Treason? What are you talking about?" He sent him home, and there was no charge. So there's a continuous, that's again, only the tip of the iceberg. Under the smoke screen of the war, of the genocidal assault on Gaza, there is an ethnic cleansing in the West Bank and a process of fascization within Israel. And unfortunately, on the one hand, the vast majority of the public in Israel are against the government, almost, according to the polls, almost 80% want Netanyahu and the government to go, but at the same time, they support the war.
And in this grim and very sobering reality for us to see of what's happening across all of the territory Israel controls, from the West Bank to inside Israel to Gaza, understanding both the way you're talking about the intentional fragmentation and repression of all forms of Palestinian resistance to oppression, and also the fascistic, like, full-on attack and on any dissent inside of Israel. Would love to hear what role you see for joint struggle of Palestinians and Jewish Israelis to work toward a shared future where everyone across the land lives in dignity and equality and freedom. I know it's a very dark moment to be asking this, but really want to hear what you see as the prospect and role there.
Look, there's nothing but a joint struggle. There's nothing else. I mean, the Palestinian-Jewish partnership is something that my party has endorsed ever since it was established. You know, the basis of Hadash is the Communist Party of Israel. The Communist Party, under different names, exists since 1919, more than 100 years. One of the main values for us, and it's not just, a kind of instrumental. It's not instrumental, it's value in itself. We do not support the partnership of Jews and Palestinians because we think there's no other way to achieve or realize our goals. This is, of course, part of the issue, but the main issue for us is that it is partnership in itself. And it's a partnership to achieve partnership. But this partnership is a value for us. And we under terrible conditions in the past as well, we never gave up. Never gave up. And it's not easy, especially under the circumstances that I just mentioned, some of them. I personally and my friends, but I am, because I'm the only Jewish member of the Knesset in Hadash, so I'm kind of, the one who gets the ricochets, so and more. So I'm not complaining, by the way. I don't want to be sound as if I was, because I'm not. I'm very honored and very proud of what I'm doing with my friends, and I'm very proud of the political place I'm in. So the only reason that I'm mentioning it is that even now, when I personally, and especially, and Palestinians, members of the Knesset, and Arabs in general in Israel, citizens in general, but even more so, the Jewish members of Hadash and those who oppose the occupation, and there are many, not enough, but there are many. We are under a terrible attack we are accused as, as traitors, fifth column, collaborators with the Nazis and whatever. Just, mention a term and I tell
We're
you for
very
sure
familiar, yeah.
that I heard it or read it. So, but under those conditions, we'll never give up our partnership. This is the time that the partnership is needed more than ever.
Right.
It's always needed, but especially in those conditions. There's no other way, and there's no other future. The future is ours. I don't know if I live up to see it, but hopefully yes. But still, the future is ours, because everybody should know there's no future but a Jewish-Palestinian partnership. And I'm proud of being part of this move, and I shall forever be there.
I feel really moved.
Look, I mean, because I think that everybody should understand, and this is what I did in the 6 weeks that I've been abroad in exile, as it were. It was forced exile, I must say. A long story. I won't exhaust you with it. Anyway, so I had, I think, hundreds of interviews with international media and podcasts and etc. And I always emphasize that the Jewish-Palestinian partnership is something that the enemies want to subvert and to undermine and to destroy, either Jewish nationalists and bigots or Arab nationalists and bigots or others. And what drives me nuts, to say the least, is your president.
Bring it.
Yeah, because instead of contributing to such a partnership, he actually has been doing exactly the opposite.
That's
by
right.
making this dichotomy as if there were Jews and Israelis are the good guys, Palestinians are the bad guys. This is an Hollywood cheap, poor movie stuff. Just stop it and just, I really don't, I cannot take it. I mean, it drives me crazy.
Actively undermining that shared future you're fighting for. Just that
Absolutely,
President Biden is actively undermining the future of Jewish.
Of course, not only verbally, but actively in the deeds that he's been doing, and because the dichotomy is between those who fight for peace, Palestinians, Jews, and others, and those who want war, Palestinian Jews and others. And this is the real dichotomy, not a dichotomy according to one's origins or nationality or I don't know what. But and it seems that people don't want to know it. I mean, even I appealed to Sanders twice. I've never got any reply for months before the massacre, because I warned that something terrible like that. I don't say that I'm a prophet and that I anticipated this specific massacre. Of course not. No one could imagine such a thing. I mean, the army should have, but it didn't. Anyway, I, of course, couldn't. But I warned, because, as you know, since this government was established, pogroms, daily pogroms by settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank occur all the time. And I wrote 10 letters to the defense minister of Israel, Gallant. The first one was in March. It is 7 months before the massacre. And I said that beyond being evil and crime in itself, those pogroms are going to explode on our face. I've never got any reply. So I appealed in that sense to Sanders. Never got any reply up till now.
I think that you bring us to the last question I have for you, which is, that vision you paint of Jewish-Palestinian partnership toward a shared future, which is the only future. What role, and also the critical role we play as not just a Jewish organization, but a US organization, and what role you see for us as Americans in creating the international pressure that could help create the conditions, either obviously immediately for the desperately needed ceasefire to end this genocidal war, but ultimately for that lasting change we all long to see. What is the role you see for us from the US?
I think that there are three things that not necessarily are, separated from one another. One, I think that you, as far as you can, press, put all pressure possible on your own, representatives. This is a so-called, the formal parliamentarian, although it's not parliament in the narrow sense, of course, but use your power vis-a-vis your representatives. I don't know where the so-called democratic progressists disappear. It's not only Bernie Sanders. Where are all the others? Okay, so they tweet. I read some of the tweets. That's not enough. You are there in order to do something. Yeah. So do something. And by the way, everybody knows that now Biden seems to be weakened because of this policy of his a year before the elections. You can use it.
With 80% of Democrats supporting a ceasefire and billions and billions being sent to support the genocidal war,
Yeah, I know. But I think you should just put pressure as far as you can. Of course, I understand. I don't tell you, it's not my role and I have no rights to tell you what to do. I'm just saying, just recommending my view. According to my view, you may find it stupid. I don't know. It's okay. You understand much better than me how the American politics works. So I'm just, saying up loud what I think, but I may be wrong. But I think that if you can put more pressure on your representatives, one way or another, by demonstrations that you did, your demonstration with not in my name and things like that, it was brilliant. I wish I could be there with you. And I was by spirit.
I was going to say you are very much. Yeah.
So this is one thing. The second thing, which I think is crucially important, one of the things that you're probably aware of that in Israel specifically, and the right wing, generally speaking, in the wider sense, in the right wing, in the wider sense, not only the bigots of the Likud and Ben Gvir and Smotrich, but also Yesh Atid, for instance. They all the time delegitimize the progressive across the globe, and especially JVP, saying that they encourage anti-Semitism, that they are anti-Israel and not anti-occupation, that they legitimize what Hamas did, etc. You have the power, specifically as Jews. Perhaps it doesn't sound politically correct or whatever, but it is in fact reality. You have the power, specifically as Jews, to raise the voice against all kinds of racism, indicating that your struggle is against Islamophobia, against racism of all forms, but also, of course, against anti-Semitism. Mention it explicitly, because there are some ears, especially in Israel, that if they do not hear it explicitly, they legitimize you. Sometimes because they are interested in doing so, and they do so in purpose. Sometimes because they don't really understand what you're saying, not because they are malicious. Some of them are, but not all of them. Not all of them. Some of them would have been ready and attentively pay attention to what you're saying. But if they don't say that you are against Hamas, and against the massacre and against anti-Semitism, if they don't hear it explicitly, they think you undermine it, you underestimate it, or you don't care about it. Again, I know it's nonsense. I'm just telling you what the sense is here and how people manipulate it to their own interests. So I think that's another thing. And the third thing, keep in touch with us. We must encourage each other. It's not easy for us. I'm sure it's not easy for you. We must keep in touch.
I couldn't agree more. It's incredibly strengthening to hear about the way that you're forging forward in the harshest of conditions to fight for that shared future and the joint struggle that is the only way.
Absolutely.
And we're so moved and honored to from here do our part. And like you said, to be clear on the sides of who's for war and who is for a future of freedom and justice and peace and for all people. It's very clear that those are the only two sides. And so I'm just honored to be a comrade on your side of it, and agree that our struggle is so strengthened by being in deep touch. So please know that we're with you. We're with you in those protests, and as they're under such intense assault, and in your brave standing as you are. And we hope you feel, and we feel you with us here as we do our part.
If I may add one sentence,
please,
short one.
Of course.
I'm afraid that we are on the verge of a civil war in Israel, and we may need your help to prevent it ahead. Because as you probably know, Ben Gvir, who is very well known, unfortunately, this disgusting thug, and I try to be very modest in the adjectives that I used. You probably know that thousands of people are already armed within Israel by his initiative. You know that now there are about 7,000 new armed individuals in Israel. The vast majority are close to the Kahana legacy. And they, as the Russian playwright said, that an arm that appears in the first stage in a play will necessarily shoot later. And I'm very worried about that. Crazy people, really crazy, fanatic, lunatic ones are armed now, and not with guns, with M16 that probably came from the United States, by the way. So they are armed, and they are just waiting for an order. This order is coming soon. They will shoot not only Palestinian citizens, they will shoot us. They will shoot under-government activists, Jews. We are seriously on the brink of civil war. And if you can do something to stop this, on top of the other things we discussed, that will be incredibly important.
Thank you for that. Yes, I mean, we know that billions of dollars of both public U.S. taxpayer dollar money and private money is funneled directly into those arms and that weaponry. And so it's critical that we think about our role in also stopping that flow toward all these forms of oppression and violence. So thank you so much, Dr. Cassif. It's just been a true honor. And we hope, like you said, the beginning of a beautiful friendship and connection and partnership.
Absolutely. I'm here for you whenever you need something. Please don't hesitate.
Likewise. I'll hand it back to Bethany. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Dr. Cassif for spending your time with us today and educating us on the history of this moment and the dire situation that we're in. Thank you, Stefanie, for your thoughtful questions. We are so grateful. The chat is back on if you want to throw your thanks into the mix. It is so important in a moment as urgent as this one to understand the historical context that led us to this place, and to understand also that our liberation is only going to be found together. So we're really grateful to both of you for visiting us today. All right, folks, we are at 4:02, so it's time to wrap up our time together. But We'll be back tomorrow for our regular Power Half Hour, and we are asking each one of you, we had over 400 of you on today, to please invite someone new. We are so excited to grow this space and this community and take action together tomorrow. Take care, everyone. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.
الجو بيضرب حر بيقلب ويشقلب فيك والناس مستعجلة دنيا مهرجلة دربك دربي مزنوق في السكة ما تطلع ضحكة تلاكيك تلاكيك وتقول يا صباح الفل ده كان نازل أبيض من الفل والياقة كانت بيضة سنة من الحر قالت تصفر لا عايزينها فل الفل وأبيض من الفل لست أفندي ده صاحي من بدري بدري ومكشر ليه أبويا صفرة وفوطة صفرة مش لايقة عليه والحلو الشيك فتح الشبابيك ومعلقها عليه مش عاجبه الجو ده يضحك لو نعمل له ايه وتقول يا صباح الفل ده كان نازل أبيض من الفل والياقة كانت بيضة سنة من الحر قالت تصفر لا عايزينها فل الفل وأبيض من الفل